Good day and welcome to the dining table. Potential national security threats in the United States. FBI Director Wray testifies at U.S. Senate intelligence hearing. Subscribe, like, and share. Here is Senator Kelly, who is questioning FBI Director Wray at the U.S. Senate intelligence hearing. And they're going to talk about potential national security threats. As a September 11th survivor, this is concerning. They're going to mention September 11th and any concerns of similarities they may see there. Let's listen.
Our panel, Director Wray, I believe you noted this earlier, but do you share my view that the threat of terrorism associated with unlawful entry through the southern border poses a serious threat to U.S. national security?
Yes, I've testified repeatedly that we are concerned about the terrorism implications from potential targeting of vulnerabilities at the border.
How would you assess the present level of threat and risk of a terrorist attack in the United States compared to past periods during your tenure?
Well, even before October 7th, I would have told this committee that we were at a heightened threat level from a terrorism perspective, in the sense that it's the first time I've seen in a long, long time the threats from homegrown violent extremists, that is jihadist-inspired extremists, domestic violent extremists, foreign terrorist organizations, and state-sponsored terrorist organizations all being elevated at one time. Since October 7th, though, that threat has gone to a whole nother level. And so this is a time, I think, for much greater vigilance than has maybe been called upon of us before October 7th.
Is the FBI postured to understand the extent of the terrorist threat associated with the southern border? We've been briefed on some specific threats. Do you feel that you know enough to assure us that the FBI is as well across it as you can be, or do you need more resources? Do you feel you're flying blind and not able to define the potential scope and extent of the threat?
I think we are working very hard with our partners, but there's no question that we need more resources to combat the threat. I'll just give a concrete example. Through working with DHS, they collect DNA samples, and we provide kits to DHS to collect DNA samples from the people coming across the border that then get sent to the FBI lab. That's part of why we asked for a significant enhancement, because of the sheer increase in people coming across means a sheer increase in the number of samples that need to be collected. That's what helps us identify those people if they're then committing crimes somewhere in the United States, or, as happens all too often, unfortunately, they go back across the border and try to illegally re-enter again. So we need to be able to process those samples quickly. There's a backlog. We asked in the 24 budget for enhancement. Not only did we not get enhancement, there was a 10% cut to the terrorist screening center. So whatever happened in 24 happened in 24, but I would urge Congress, as we look at fiscal year 25, that we can't double down on those cuts.
Here we have Senator Rubio, who's questioning FBI Director Wray on who's coming in. Are they connected to gangs? What are the threats? Let's listen.
Over the last 3 years, millions of people crossed the U.S. border illegally, and many have been released into the country. Have members or people with ties to dangerous gangs, like, for example, the prison gang Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, were they among the people that came into this country?
I don't know that I can speak to the specific gang, but certainly we have had dangerous individuals enter the United States of a variety of sorts.
Are we seeing crimes from people that entered the country over the last 3 years, some of them with ties to gangs or other criminal organizations?
Well, I guess what I would say is this: from an FBI perspective, we are seeing a wide array of very dangerous threats that emanate from the border, and that includes everything from the drug trafficking. The FBI alone seized enough fentanyl in the last 2 years to kill 270 million people.
Wow.
That's just on the fentanyl side. An awful lot of the violent crime in the United States is at the hands of gangs who are themselves involved in the distribution of that fentanyl.
But you're also seeing and tracking local law enforcement arresting and for example, the assault on the police officers in New York all the reporting said they had ties to this gang in particular. But there's no doubt that people that were criminals in their country of origin have crossed that border and are now in the U.S. committing crimes.
Correct.
Is there now a black market emerging to sell? We've seen reports of a black market emerging, selling fake Social Security cards, fake green cards. Have you seen reporting on that?
Well, certainly there is on the darknet, for example, there is a significant marketplace for different kinds of stolen identity.
What about in the
information.
street?
I think as well. Yeah.
Okay. And well, there are smuggling networks all over the world that specialize in moving people from all over the world, including from the Middle East, Central Asia, and so forth. Are we aware of any of these smuggling organizations are run by or are conducted by people that have ties, for example, to ISIS or other terrorist organizations?
So I want to be a little bit careful how far I can go in open session, but there, there is a particular network that has where some of the overseas facilitators of the smuggling network have ISIS ties that we're very concerned about, and that we've been spending an enormous amount of effort with our partners investigating. Exactly what that network is up to is something that's, again, the subject of our current investigation.
This is Senator Cornyn, who is going to question FBI Director Wray about people on the terrorist list that may have gotten away. He's also going to mention September 11th. Let's listen.
We know there were, since 2021, approximately 1.8 million gotaways. In other words, not people that turn themselves in claiming asylum, not people paroled into the interior, but 1.8 million migrants who were evading law enforcement at the border. Can you tell us, can you tell the American people with any certainty that there are 0 people on the terrorist watch list that were among that 1.8 million gotaways?
Well, what I would say is you, I think, rightly highlighted the kind of what you remember Secretary Rumsfeld used to refer to the known known, the known unknown, and the unknown unknown. And I think here, in many ways, the national security ramifications of the issues at the border are better reflected in some ways more by what we don't know about the people who snuck in, provided fake documents, or in some other way got in when there wasn't sufficient information available at the time they came in to connect the dots is almost more significant in our view than the actual number of so-called KSTs, because those people, for the most part, are stopped, detained, and processed appropriately.
And I guess you would answer the same way that people with criminal records, members of criminal street gangs and others being among that 1.8 million figure for migrants who got away. We don't know what that 1.8 million is composed of, do we?
That's correct.
What we do know is that more than 37,000 Chinese nationals were detained at the U.S. southern border in 2023. That number's up 10 times over the earlier tally. And these individuals who were, of course, detained, sometimes they claim asylum, sometimes they're paroled into the interior. But again, we don't know how many Chinese nationals that may be among that 1.8 million gotaways that have made their way into the interior of the United States. You would answer the same way.
Right. We don't know what we're dealing with in that particular context.
We don't know anyone that's coming in.
It gets especially challenging because presumably within that group, you've got not only people who may mean us harm, but also people who are fleeing the CCP and share our concerns about their authoritarian thuggishness.
Of course, that's an important point. I'm not suggesting all of them are, but I'm just suggesting this is a huge gaping vulnerability in our national security that we don't have answers for. I'm reminded that there were 26 co-conspirators in the 9/11 attacks against the United States, killing 3,000 people. 26 people killed 3,000 Americans on 9/11. I worry that among the people that are coming across the border that are evading law enforcement, that there are some people among those that mean to do us harm. Do you share that concern?
I do.
Wow.
And in fact, according to public sources, this is CNN, August 30, 2023. You alluded to this earlier about dozens of migrants from Uzbekistan that were being facilitated by a suspected ISIS agent in Turkey that was assisting those migrants to make their way to the southern border and into the United States, correct?
So that's a threat stream that we're very concerned about. We're very actively investigating, working with DHS on both people whose travel was facilitated, but also members of the facilitation network in some other way overseas. There's probably more I could share on that in closed session if you would like.
And they just can't share with the public because then you're just giving people intelligence and secret information. This is a lot of information already.
Well, one of the things that I think this reveals is that our border situation, the illegal immigration, has changed over the years. It seems to me, coming from a border state, years ago, you would look at people coming across who wanted to work, wanted to provide for their family. Now, of course, we understand people fleeing violence and poverty, things like that. But also, we see the pull factors, the fact that if you make it to the border, you can likely stay for the rest of your natural life, is an enormous magnet for people to come, but also, and not just people who have benign intentions toward the United States who want a better life, but also people that want to do us harm.
So for a country like Venezuela, they've closed, flights coming in. So if the U.S. wanted to deport this, they're going to probably end up staying in the United States, because if their country is not taking them, then where do they go? So from what he's saying is that they believe once they get over the border, they know these laws, they know how things are going, they know there's no way for them to go back.
I know sometimes people say, well, this is just a fantastic theory. It's no basis in reality. Do you consider that to be a frivolous consideration?
I do not. And I've been, I think, very vocal about this. We, of course, are not responsible, FBI, for the physical security of the border. We work hard to be good partners with DHS on that. But there are a whole host of threats that emanate from the border. And some of them are criminal threats. We talked about fentanyl and violence. And then, of course, we have concerns that it could be a vulnerability that terrorist organizations could seek to exploit. I would add that we are not at the moment tracking any specific terrorist plot coming across the border in that regard, but it wasn't that long ago, as you will recall, that we had indictments of an individual who was trying to smuggle foreign nationals across the border to assassinate former President Bush. So it goes to your point that numbers are important, but numbers don't tell the whole story. It only takes a few people who can be responsible for a whole lot of harm.
Senator Bennett.